Coming up with this week in computer hardware, Mobile World Congress, Samsung's S9 is waiting, even if it does look just like an S8. Huawei's got more MateBooks. Phone sales are starting to look like car sales, and Bitmain could put a hurt on NVIDIA, AMD, and Qualcomm. Razer's latest laptop, and quite a bit more. It's all coming up next on TWiCH.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiCH.
Bandwidth for TWiCH is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is TWiCH, This Week in Computer Hardware, episode 455, recorded March 1st, 2018. Samsung delivers the best screen ever.
This episode of This Week in Computer Hardware is brought to you by Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Home plays a big role in your life. That's why Quicken Loans created Rocket Mortgage. It lets you apply simply and understand the entire mortgage process fully so you can be confident that you're getting the right mortgage for you. Get started at rocketmortgage.com/twit.
Welcome to TWiCH, This Week in Computer Hardware, TWiCH's weekly show that brings you, ladies and gentlemen, hardware news. Although this week, well, we love desktops. We love the eternal chase for graphics cards. We particularly love phones, and boy, do we have some phone news for you from Mobile Congress, including what DisplayMate says may be the finest cell phone screen ever produced. Right now, vibrating in his enthusiasm over the idea of the world's best smartphone screen, Mr. Ryan Shrout of PCPer.com in beautiful Kentucky. Sir.
Hello. Yes, I am doing just fine. I'm trying to act real. I'm really excited about all the mobile announcements. Did that come across?
Possibly the worst actor I've ever met.
Fair. I'll take it.
You lie like a cheap rug from Sears, which is to say rolled up and just never goes flat. Oh my goodness. Let's talk about something you actually are excited about. There's a bunch of good news out of Mobile World Congress. There's a bunch of stuff going on this week. But, you know, while we are thinking about the fact that some of us may never be able to buy a GPU again if the prices don't, radically drop back to somewhere vaguely near MSRP, the return of the APUs from AMD is a big deal. You guys, we've talked about PCPer's, benchmarks of the Ryzen 5 2400G. We've talked about what's going on in terms of performance. Now you guys are taking a more discrete look at the GPU performance. And I'm going to say right now, this is not a 1050 or a 1070, but it is a damn sight better than what you're going to find packaged with an Intel CPU. Because at this point, to remind everybody, the original series of AMD Ryzen CPUs did not include graphics technology on the chip, which means, if you are building a Ryzen system, you have to buy a GPU of some type. So the 2200G, 2400G, the look, we talked last week about how memory speed affected the graphics performance. Hint, spend the extra money for faster RAM, because the RAM is shared between the CPU and the GPU in these parts. Where are you seeing, how are the graphics falling? Where do they fall in the world of graphics?
So this story looked at GPU compute, so not on the gaming side. The previous one looked at the gaming side. This was what other use cases are there for GPU accelerated applications, whether it be video transcoding or other stuff. I think we've all come to the realization, it's not a surprise to anybody at this point, that the AMD Vega architecture on the Ryzen 5 and 3 2000 series parts is definitely faster than what the Intel system can provide. What's interesting, though, is that GPU compute is kind of a different beast. It's not just raw compute, or it's not just raw gaming performance, right? There's other things that come into play. We started with, Sysoft Sandra, a synthetic test. We showed some benchmarks with that. And if you look at, the results here, it's a walk-away victory for what the Ryzen 5 2400G can do over the Core i5 8400 in terms of that raw compute performance. Now, the difficulty there is that's synthetics, raw peak performance for both of these parts in theory. But what does that apply in terms of actual applications? The first thing we looked at was video transcoding, and what we've come across is that the support for AMD accelerated video transcoding with this newest architecture hasn't been proliferated out quite a bit yet. So we, couldn't use something standard like we see with Handbrake yet. We use DVD Fab, which is a DVD ripping software, allows you to convert it out there, convert it down into compressed video. And what you see here is actually you do get a significant improvement in performance going from using the CPU on the 2400G to the GPU on the 2400G. And it's an increase in performance of about 60% or so. However, the 8400, the Core i5 8400 actually is faster with its GPU as well because it's using Intel QuickSync. This application is not using the standard GPU stream processors on the Intel part like it is on the AMD part. It's using that dedicated fixed function QuickSync unit. And as a result, you see that it actually performs better than the Ryzen 5 2400G, which is, I think, maybe a little bit of a surprising result. Not a huge shock if you follow kind of what QuickSync can do. When it was first launched, Intel QuickSync was kind of a throwaway feature because no software really supported it. That has been fixed and addressed by Intel and their developer relations, and really I think software guys just understanding how it worked and that there's a significant benefit to utilizing that type of stuff. If you scroll down to Luxmark as another example, this is an OpenCL rendering application, and here you can see this is using kind of your general compute methodology, and you'll see that the Ryzen 5 2400G with its GPU result here, the higher is better. So it's 40% faster than the Intel processor could handle, right? And if you look at the Intel part, those top two bars in the graph, you can see that moving from its CPU to its GPU didn't actually improve its capabilities very much. Again, a little bit indicative of the power of its own processing cores, but also the lack of power in just the raw GPU compute portion of it. So there you can see the AMD Vega was able to take care of it. And then the last benchmark on this page, I believe the V-Ray benchmark, is a little bit more complicated. It's a popular like third-party rendering plugin for 3D Studio Max, Maya, Revit, Rhino, a bunch of stuff like that. And it runs on NVIDIA GPUs, it runs on CUDA. For AMD GPUs, it uses OpenCL. And we couldn't actually get it to run on the Intel hardware. So what we compared it to instead is a discrete Radeon RX 550. And then this one, lower is better. So clearly the discrete card is significantly faster, I think driven by the memory interface as much as, if not more so, than just the raw compute capability of these parts. But what it does do is it shows you that this APU, this integrated graphics part, can be utilized for some of this stuff. Is it going to be your best performing part or your best option? No. But for $100 to $150, $170 or so processor with integrated graphics, it actually does pretty well. And as Ken pointed out in the story, one of the things that's interesting is if you run that benchmark on your GPU, the rest of the system is still responsive because the CPU portion of the chip is still unactive, right? So you can use it for other things. So your PC is still responsive while doing it. So those are some other potential benefits to what these Ryzen APUs can offer over Intel, although it's not as clear cut, right? On the gaming side, it was pretty clear cut, right? That the Ryzen CPUs were significantly faster across the board in terms of looking at mainstream graphics performance. When you start getting into video encoding and transcoding, QuickSync plays a much more interesting role and kind of changes things a little bit. But I think overall, still a good showing for this round of stuff from AMD. I think one of the other side notes is the advent of like GPU compute never really took hold like I thought it was going to, right? And maybe that's unfair because it's happened in so many applications that we don't notice it. But it's in some Adobe applications, it's in some Microsoft applications. Right. Some segments of Microsoft Office use GPU acceleration, but it's hard to know to what degree because there's no kind of before and after mentality anymore.
Well, it's just another tool. It's just another tool in the toolbox for developers to attempt to increase real or perceived performance of an application. I mean, I think absolutely it shows up in some parts of Photoshop and in some parts of Premiere. The Puget Sound actually has some pretty good benchmarks where they look at Adobe performance across different GPUs. It's definitely worth reading if you're curious about that. But I agree. It seemed like it was going to be everywhere, and then it just kind of. I just don't think enough people have discrete GPUs with enough horsepower to do something particularly useful for most developers.
Yeah.
We wait, ladies and gentlemen, with bated breath. So it's, it's a good thing. I don't know what else to say about it in terms of performance.
Yep.
I'm feeling like you've done this to death. Go buy a 2400G. If you don't have the money for a discrete GPU and you want to be able to game, go buy a 2400G. Is that the message at this point?
Yeah, essentially, yes.
And if you want faster performance in other apps, if you can figure out what those faster performing apps are that require a GPU, you got that option too. Mobile World Congress took place this week. Very beginning of the week, I want to say Sunday, Samsung dropped the Galaxy S9 and S9 Plus. As Sebastian writes up in PC Per, Samsung unveiled their not-so-secret Galaxy S9 and S9 Plus smartphones at their Unpacked event at Mobile World Congress. They had also, I guess, accidentally posted the launch video the day before, so that kind of complicated the surprisey part of things. Snapdragon 845 in the US and China. Samsung's Exynos 9810 Octa in the rest of the world, and camera updates. In a lot of ways, the reaction to this was, wow, it's like a Samsung S8, except it's got a better camera. Dual 12 megapixel rear cameras, cameras like are at f1.5 or f2.4. The second camera's fixed at f2.4. And the idea is that they're not going to sacrifice daylight performance, but they're going to give you, better performance in low light. This is interesting to kind of look at, because Samsung, if you care about it, I think it's more of a gimmick, but Samsung was really excited about their super slow-mo, which takes 0.2 seconds of video and then stretches it out over 6 seconds. So it's capturing 960 frames per second in HD, which, as far as I'm concerned, is a pretty awesome kind of, feat to do on something that's in your, it's something that'll fit in your pocket. I mean, given that you can rent a really super serious slow motion camera for say $10,000-$15,000 a day if you're in the right part of the country, to have that level of power inside your phone is pretty outrageous. I just wish it was longer than 0.2 seconds, because 0.2 seconds goes by really fast.
And you don't really have a control over that, right?
Not so much.
It auto detects for when the motion occurs, which sounds great, except you have to trust it to do it when you wanted it to happen. So
well, it's an interesting.
I guess I would trust the AI more than I would trust my capability to tap the screen at the right time, have the screen react in the appropriate time to capture what I wanted to capture. I don't know. 0.2 seconds is a very short window.
You can do it up to 20 times in a video. I would like to see, could you do it in post? Does it have to be done live? I have not gotten that deep into it, because as exciting as the new cameras are, I'm just not up for spending $720 on a new Android phone and then a couple $100 on new software to replace all the apps I use and pay money for on the iOS type of things. Pre-orders are up now, up at Samsung's websites, and March 16th is the release date for both of those. DisplayMate, which is a fantastic website. They call themselves the standard for excellence for image and picture quality. My buddy Robert Herron from AVXL, who is a pretty serious, tester of video, loves DisplayMate. They got really, really excited about the Galaxy S9 OLED display, and they flat out, they basically say it is the most advanced screen they've ever tested. The most innovative and high-performance display we've ever tested, with the highest absolute color accuracy and peak brightness. They are super excited about this, you know, and they basically flat out, you know, say that OLED displays have tremendous performance advantages over LCDs. So high-end and flagship smartphones need OLED displays in order to compete at state-of-the-art performance levels, securing OLED as the definitive premier display technology for the top-tier smartphones in the foreseeable future for the next 3 to 5 years. And they get really in-depth in their analysis of the phone. They're basically saying it's virtually indistinguishable from perfect in terms of the absolute color accuracy. The high brightness mode is 20% brighter than the Galaxy S8. You know, they said they had record small shifts in brightness and color with viewing angle, including white. You know, it's certified by the UHD Alliance for Mobile HDR Premium. It just goes on and on and on, including, like we've seen in some other phones on the Android side of things recently, user adjustable white points. This is pretty exciting if you want to geek out and learn a lot about cell phone screen technology. So congratulations to Samsung. And I can't actually wait to see what that screen looks like, especially after the launch of the Pixel 2 with its oh-so-blue issues. It's interesting to watch. Samsung is doing some pretty fantastic things. Were you excited about the new Huawei's new MateBook X Pro announcement?
Yeah, actually, I was. The Huawei devices, the laptops I've used, the original MateBook, the MateBook E, these were kind of like convertible tablets, detachable tablets that were fairly good devices. The first one was actually they're both kind of based on the same form factor, extremely thin, fairly high performance for the capability you have, you know, decent battery life, but not great. But because of the size of the space they had to actually put battery in, they released the MateBook X, which was kind of, you know, the competitor to the MacBook Air. This MateBook X Pro kind of expands on that. Although it's a different enough device that it probably could have used its own nomenclature. You can see there the bezels around the screen are incredibly thin, going beyond even, at least in these photos, I haven't seen it in person yet, going beyond what the XPS 13 does. It's very slim. It has an even more odd webcam placement location. If you can't tell from that photo, what we're looking at is the camera is not on the screen at all. It actually pops up from the function key row. So between F6 and F7, I think is what it is, there's a pop-up webcam that comes up. So if you were looking for a solution to ultra-thin bezels that doesn't have the same problems as the XPS 13s and XPS 13 in terms of looking up your nose or directly at your fingers while you're working on the machine on the webcam, this is not it. It has the, it was like, it sounded really interesting when they said it popped up from the keyboard, but you know, it can only pop up so far. There's only so much depth to the device itself. And if anything, you've actually gotten the camera a little bit closer to your fingers on the keyboard. So the screenshots and stuff I've seen of the webcam in use don't look exciting to me. Performance-wise, it's 8th gen hardware, 8th gen Intel Core i7 processor. It's got a discrete NVIDIA GeForce MX 150 chip in it. So not tremendous discrete graphics power, but better than the integrated for sure. 8 or 16 gigs of memory, 256 or 512 gigs of NVMe storage. Does have a fingerprint reader up there above the delete key. You can see, you know, Mystic Silver and Space Gray, of course. And I think at the bottom of that story, it says it's supposed to be 1,499 euros. Right. But 1850 US. I actually think that they've updated that it's supposed to be like a 1-to-1. So it might start at 1499 US as well. So definitely a pricey machine, but incredibly thin, really impressive industrial design, bad camera placement, but impressive hardware combination there. So we'll have to measure. We want to look. What I'm most curious now is battery life, sustained performance. You know, can they cool those components in that slim of a form factor for very long? Yeah, but you know, they've done better than I expected in terms of designing these machines, and they're just, you know, Huawei has other issues in terms of getting cell phones for sale in the US. They don't really have that same concern with the notebooks. They just need to find places to sell them. Amazon and Newegg are the locations you'll be looking for them here. But I think these are shipping in the next 30 days or so. So we should know soon. Yeah. All right.
Interesting article up on the Wall Street Journal while we're talking about Mobile World Congress. the mobile phone industry is starting to look like the car industry, or as the article titles, your love of your old smartphone is a problem for Apple and Samsung. Some shoppers are balking at the new phone price tags, pushing $1,000, or features that don't impress. And I've got a quote from Sean Cleland, who's the director of mobile at B-Stock Solutions, which is basically a place where you can trade in or purchase overstock phones, not too far away in Redwood City on the other side of the peninsula. And Mr. Cleland says, smartphones now resemble the car industry very closely. I still want to drive a Mercedes, but I'll wait a couple of years to buy the older model. Same mentality. And they also point out in the article that essentially what Sprint and T-Mobile are doing is effectively allowing people to lease phones, basically just, pay month after month after month and slot in a new phone for the latest device. That's not as popular. But the other thing apparently is the largest growing segment of the global smartphone industry, accounting for nearly 1 out of every 10 devices sold, is refurbished phones. That's according to Counterport Technology Market Research, which tracks device sales. And that 1 in 10 may not sound like much, but you're talking about 1.6 billion smartphones being sold last year. And a lot of the older phones can still sell for several $100s. And to put all of this into context, new smartphone shipments are pretty much at their basically hit their lowest point in forever at the end of 2017. So I think it's going to be interesting to watch what manufacturers do and to see where the pricing goes, because I don't think they can go much. Well, they can go lots higher. I mean, remember the Virtu phones. Let's cover it with diamonds and eagle claws. Let's find an endangered species to wrap around this phone and then charge $1 million for it. The Saudi prince market. But I thought it was interesting, the idea that more and more people are starting to look at, refurbished hardware, used hardware, or just simply waiting, which sounds a lot like me at this point, although I'll be swapping in a new battery in my phone, which I'm very excited about.
There you go.
There we go. Yeah, I'm cheap. But my phone still works. T-Mobile and Sprint have named the first 5G cities as the race to build next-gen network intensifies. It's up on GeekWire. If you're curious, if you're thinking about 5G, and I'm sure we all are, every single day, because for me, I was shocked at how fast 4G became available, and even more amazed by the performance change on my AT&T smartphone when they changed the little icon in the corner to 4G. No 4G technology in the phone, but it was 4G and it felt so much faster. I am, yes, openly and officially mocking the fact that 5G is coming. I'm excited about it. I want it to happen. But the last several rollouts have taken so long and been such an incredible pain. I'm not really holding my breath at this point. But T-Mobile says they're going to build out 5G in 30 cities this year, starting with New York, Los Angeles, Dallas, and Las Vegas, which is to say a bunch of big-ass places with a lot of people. And Sprint is keeping things a little chiller: Atlanta, Chicago, Dallas, Houston, Los Angeles, and Washington, D.C.s. Now, the crazy part of this, for example, T-Mobile says they're building out 5G in 30 cities. You won't be able to get 5G because the 5G phones aren't coming until 2019. So, true. Did I mention the whole getting really excited and waiting a long time?
Yeah, it does happen. It does happen. You got to have the networks in place before anybody will want to spend the money on a phone for it. So it is an interesting kind of race at that point. A very slow, methodical race, if you will.
Yes.
I think it's interesting this time is the carriers are more interested in the move to 5G than they were for 4G. 4G basically gave them a marketing spiel. It gave them a way to try to sell new devices and additional services. 5G for these carriers is all about increasing like spectrum space for them. So they have a bunch more capacity on the given spectrum they already have. So for them, they will want to be pushing people to 5G as soon as possible because it allows them to get more customers in the same spectrum space than they could with 4G. So for that reason alone, I kind of feel like that the 5G stuff is going to be maybe a little bit quicker, more direct. It's already kind of been accelerated a little bit. The question will be, can they come up with compelling reasons for consumers to want to buy in? Because that's what you can set up all the 5G network capabilities you want. If you don't have people using the 5G phones, it doesn't really help anything. So we'll see.
Good to know. Oh my goodness. I just opened up a window on a website, and of course, it threw up a video because videos make me happy when I don't ask for them to be played. Mobile World Congress 2018. In the weirdest announcement, Western Digital launched the SN720 and the SN520 M.2 NVMe SSDs, which is not normally something I think of stuffing inside of a cell phone. Did Alan have any observations on why they would announce M.2 SSDs at a Mobile World Congress?
I don't have an answer for that. I do not know. That aside, these are basically, this is Western Digital's first custom controller for NVMe drives. They're going to release a buy 4 and a buy 2 version of this, like 4 lanes of PCIe and 2 lanes of PCIe, hence the 2 different color schemes there and notches on the devices themselves. I think they've said capacities up to 1 terabyte on the higher speed, up to 512 gigs on the lower speed, 8 NAND channels on the controller, not much of other details there. Performance-wise, they're quoting 3.4 gigs read, 2.8 gigs write. Alan did mention last night that sounds a little bit, those performance numbers seem high enough that they're probably using some SLC caching capability on these drives, but that could be anything from straight SLC, permanent fixed amount cache, to what Micron's doing, Crucial Micron Group is doing, where they kind of adjust which parts switch between the different modes on the fly as the capacity fills up. So we'll have to wait and see. We don't really have any details on what they're doing with that. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Just Western Digital, after their acquisition of SanDisk, kind of, taking the NAND storage market more seriously, understanding that hard drives are a very different beast, and while they're not going anywhere in terms of actual revenue and profit margin, NAND is where that's at.
There you have it. Oh my goodness. If you've been thinking about a mortgage, and it happens, you wake up one day, you're like, I need a mortgage. I want a new mortgage. I'm thinking about buying a house. How do I get a mortgage? This episode of This Week in Computer Hardware, conveniently enough, brought to you by Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Mortgage experience has traditionally been painful. It wasn't keeping up with the times. It was dated. Needed a client focus. Needed to be focused on you. It needed a technological revolution because, quite frankly, paper is so old school. That's why Quicken Loans created Rocket Mortgage. Rocket Mortgage gives you the confidence you need when it comes to buying a home or refinancing your existing home loan. It's simple. They want you to fully understand all the details. They want you to be confident you're getting the right mortgage for you. They want you to know what your options are and what you're getting into. That is fantastic. And it's convenient because it's Quicken, right? They know everybody. They're trusted partners. You can share your financial information with Rocket Mortgage at the touch of a button. It's powerful. Whether you're looking to buy your first home or your 10th, Rocket Mortgage is able to perform thousands of calculations in seconds. They do the hard lifting, the heavy lifting, so you can basically concentrate on making the right choice. Based on your income, your assets, your credit, Rocket Mortgage can analyze all the home loan options for which you qualify and find the one that's just right for you. Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Apply simply, understand fully, mortgage confidently. To get started, go to rocketmortgage.com/twit. That's rocketmortgage.com/TWIT. Equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states, NMLSconsumeraccess.org, number 3030. And we thank Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans for their support of This Week in Computer Hardware. Oh my goodness. Tech Reports was kind of curious, right? We finally got the thumbs up. First Intel was like, there's a problem. And then Intel was like, we've got a patch for Spectre and Meltdown. And then they were like, the patches are worse than the actual problem. Stop updating. And then they finally got the updated reboot pain-free patches sorted. And, I like what Jeff Campman over at Tech Report says. I've been biting my nails waiting for Intel to issue stable versions of its Spectre mitigating microcode updates, and for the Blue Team's hardware partners to bake them into new firmware for their products. I like the idea of biting your nails while waiting for a patch, because if you're on an Android phone of an older model or just about any inexpensive router, that patch is never coming. It's not. Not for Spectre, but for any of the other flaws they found out in there. But
right,
you know, it's real simple. The newer the laptop or desktop, the less likely you are to have a negative impact on performance. You know, they looked at, for one thing, synthetic JavaScript benchmarks to take a look at single-threaded performance changes, and you take a hit. Whether or not you're going to notice any of these, you know, I mean, it's like 6.7%. 9.7%, 7.3%, depending on the benchmark. You know, the geometric mean of the performance changes we saw suggests a 6.1% loss in these benchmarks. And what's interesting is he points out that, you know, that doesn't sound like much because it's not, but that can also be most of the speed or performance upgrades you get when you go to a new generation of processors. So, you know, Mr. Campman is a little less than impressed with that. In terms of gaming, you know, super tight. Like, or, you know, looked at PC Mark 10 Essentials, pardon me, not gaming, which looks at startup times, video conferencing performance, web browsing, and, you know, this was like 13.5% slower loading applications in the post-Spectre patch. You know, which means that's gonna, you know, when you launch something, that's more than 10% slower. And we presume when you get into older processors, the hit they take is more dramatic. In terms of the actual productivity stuff, you know, you're looking at stuff like 9% better after the patch in PC Mark 10. You know, PC Mark 10 digital content creation, you know, virtually indistinguishable before or after, and gaming, which is the last of the charts, virtually indistinguishable, because, you know, most games don't really deal with I/O once the game, you know, everything loads into main system memory and then it's done. So I'd be curious, is there a benchmark that examines the level load times for games so you can determine the post Spectre / Meltdown patch impact on your gaming performance? You know, Skylake and newer, Mr. Campman basically suggests go ahead and upgrade. You know, I'll be curious to see, you know, what it looks like on older processors, and we will find out when we find out and share that news with you.
Yeah, I continue to get some tweets and emails asking if I have any, you know, secret information about why motherboard companies aren't going to release microcode updates for older boards, you know, 3-4 generations ago. And there's no secret answer to it. It's just a cost thing at this point, right? They don't want to send their engineers back to look at code they haven't touched in several years to try to update it for this patch. And I understand that some people are justifiably upset by that. I don't have a good solution for it. You know, you can't really boycott a company for a product that you do a one-time purchase of. What I was hoping would happen, and I've expressed this to Intel a few times, but no movement on, is like, you know, Intel's the bigger guy here. It's not completely their job, but if they were to help finance some of these updates, you know, give these board vendors and these OEMs a little bit of money to say, here, put this towards engineering time, fix these things, as a goodwill gesture, that would be nice. Haven't seen any movement on that, so I don't know what to expect. Yeah, exactly. Right. And I kind of, you know, don't, you know, I maybe this is a sad statement of my expectations, but I don't really expect them to go back and do that anymore, because that is 3 years old or 4 years old. You know, we don't see that with most platform updates, right? So it still sucks, but
I feel sadness in your voice.
A little.
Well, you know what? It's another opportunity for AMD to be awesome. How's that? Logitech G603 and G613 wireless gaming mouse and keyboard review. Worry-free wireless, which is always a challenge. I still use wired keyboards on the vast majority of my desktops because they are flawless in terms of performance, at least until I wear them out. What did Mr. Koch have to say about the 603 and the 613?
These are really interesting devices, right? So they both promise 18 months of battery life on AA batteries. I think the mouse
long
uses
time.
2, and the keyboard maybe only uses 1. Maybe it is 2. Yeah, it really is. Now, with the mouse, the caveat is there's a high performance mode and a low performance mode. The low performance mode is where you get your 18 months rating. High performance mode, you get a 500 hours of continuous gameplay on it. And the difference there is 1 millisecond versus 8 millisecond response times. Obviously, there's a switch on the bottom you can move between. So it's, if you want to go game mode to regular everyday mode, you can do that on the fly. It's not like you have to reboot your computer or do anything crazy like that. I've actually been using this keyboard for several months myself, and have come to like it a lot. It uses the Romer G switches, which I'm a fan of. They still have a tactile enough feedback, but they're not loud. And like I said, I do thousands and thousands of words of typing a day on these, and have no issue with it. It goes away from like the super gamer looking designs of thing as well. It's a little bit more, aggressive professional. I just made that up, if you want to call it that. It's got all your media functionality on it, which I appreciate because I do listen to a lot of music while I'm on my PC. Both of these devices have the ability to connect to both wireless receivers, so like the 2.4 gigahertz unified receiver from Logitech, which they ship with, or Bluetooth. And the best part is you can have them paired to both. So like on the keyboard, I always have my phone kind of sitting in a like a phone dock thing right in front of my display, so I can see notifications and texts as they come in. And I attach it to my phone through Bluetooth, and I can hit the button on the keyboard there. That one that looks like a Wi-Fi signal, one that looks like a Bluetooth logo. It is a Bluetooth logo. And I can switch between typing on my PC or typing on my phone or tablet or whatever it happens to be. With the mouse, it has the same capability. So if you want to take the mouse with you on the road, maybe you attach it to your, you pair it to your laptop through Bluetooth. You put a switch on the bottom, you put it in a Bluetooth mode. Now you're ready to go. You don't have to worry about getting that wireless unified receiver out of the back of your PC or something like that. So keyboard's $150, mouse is $70. The only complaint that Chris had about the keyboard is that the keycaps, the text is printed on them rather than, etched or anything like this. It's not an RGB keyboard. It's not even a backlit keyboard. Right. That's
just basically saying you'll wear the letters off the keys.
Yes. Now, as I've been using mine for probably 4 months, haven't noticed any of that occurring yet, not even kind of to start with. But it doesn't mean it's not going to happen. But I think some people may be a little bit disappointed about there being no backlight at all. But that's how you get to 18 hours of battery life on 2 AA batteries, as part of that. So the mouse, very kind of simplistic design, a standard gaming mouse. All the buttons are controllable and programmable, of course. I think. And it does use the light speed wireless connectivity on that. That's how you get down to that 1 millisecond. It uses their new Hero controller, which it's been a while since I've done the research on the Hero controller. It basically it was tuned for low power, yet still being high performance. It's not their highest performing sensor for mice, but it's a balance between high performance and being able to get that battery life for 2 AA batteries for a long time. So. As somebody who uses the mouse I use is a Logitech that is based on the higher end controller that does require me to plug it in every 3 to 4 days or so. That does kind of get annoying. Yeah. All of a sudden I look down at my mouse and I see this little red flashing light and I attach it, and it's not a huge deal. I attach it for the rest of that day through the USB cable, and then when I come in the next morning, I detach it and use it wirelessly. But this is just kind of an alternative solution for that. So pretty nice design. It got a silver award on the keyboard, a gold award on the mouse, silver on the keyboard because of those printed on keycaps. But if you can live with that. Like I said, I've been using this for a while and have been a big fan. So
one of the cruelest titles I've seen in a long time up on PC Per, Ken Addison, Razer Blade Stealth, early 2018 review. Almost there. And I think this is a comment on the fact that Razer has not been making laptops for a long time. I should point out that my co-host Shannon bought a Razer laptop and had to send it back twice due to mouse pad failures. And you know, good looking laptop, excellent specs. You know, some of the interesting stuff going on here is you know, the battery life. You know, it's better than an HP Envy or a Dell Inspiron, which are, I think, significantly smaller, but definitely trailing an HP Spectre or an Asus ZenBook. You know, it's above average, but given the battery size, it looks like it should last longer. It's really well priced, right? About $100 less than a comparably configured option from Dell. You know, but there's not much in terms of more entry level specs on that one. You know, I thought it was interesting because Ken, you know, says this is the notebook that Apple should have made a while ago as the evolution of the MacBook Air. While a bit thicker than the Air was, the design of the blade itself is a great compromise between thickness and usability. But he had a lot of issues with the trackpad and the keyboard. You know, what was his biggest complaint on that? Because performance-wise, you know, it's not particularly impressive. I mean, it's not bad, but I guess it depends on the, you know, benchmark. It's in the handbrake. It's in the middle of the pack. Cinebench, it's in the tail of the pack. But the truth is looking at the benchmarks are extremely close to each other. Yeah. At least until you get to like PC Mark 8. But you know, at this point, everything inside of PC Mark 8 is running so fast, I don't think you're going to notice a real world difference on that one. What was the trauma with the keyboard for him? Oops,
so the keyboard travel was really low. And it's very shallow compared to even similarly designed notebooks in terms of thinness. And also the trackpad sensitivity was a little bit much as well. He indicated that he would quite often accidentally touch the, you know, press the touchpad down with his palms while he was typing. Kind of equated it to the new MacBook Pros where you have the adjustable stuff, but on the lightest setting. Only this time it's not adjustable. From the performance angle, you know, yes, we're using the same processor as many other notebooks we've now tested, and so it's kind of homogenous in kind of what performance profile you get. This is a little bit behind the other ones, not by a lot, but by a little bit. And we really think that's due to they were more aggressive in wanting to keep the fan speed low and the noise level low. I think they had some feedback previously from Razer machines that they were just obnoxiously loud with or without, you know, the discrete GPU being utilized. So they actually did a very good job making this a quiet machine, but I think that came at the sacrifice of a little bit of cooling capability and thus performance a little bit lower, but not, like you said, not a lot. The design was really good. The build quality is good. I think a lot of the capabilities and functions around the keyboard are good. You know, Ken liked the little pieces like the backlight was very clean. There was no bleed around the keys on my XPS 13. That was a continual problem, that there was a ton of bleed of the backlight around the keyboard that would come up, especially if you're in a very dark place like on a airplane or something like that would be a problem. And if you hold down the function key, it only illuminates the function keys at the top of function buttons at the top of the keyboard as well, which is kind of a nice touch. They've done a lot of really good things with this system, with the design, but the keyboard itself, it's all personal preference thing, and chances are you might be able to get used to something like that. The palm resistance slash soft touching for the click response is a little bit more problematic, because I don't know if that's something you can kind of adjust in software or get used to. So that was kind of the primary concern there. And then in terms of pricing, I had always had this expectation that the Razer machines were, you know, just more expensive than everything else. But if you look at the last page, Ken does a comparison of that to a similarly spec'd XPS 13, and actually the Razer was a little bit less expensive. What the Razer doesn't do is it doesn't offer a lower cost base model, you know, one that has a 1080p screen with a non-touch display and, you know, smaller storage or system memory, those types of things that the Dell does offer in order to get that entry-level price down to $999 or $1099. You know, Razer doesn't really do that. And it may be a little bit of an issue of a scale, right? They don't want to have so many SKUs that they can't keep track of, or that it's difficult for them to offer support for or manage. So from that standpoint, I get it. So it's still not cheap, but it's within range of everything else that it's competing against, which is nice.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. It's good. They're learning. It's interesting to watch a company like Razer kind of sort things out and move forward in the laptop category. Yep. Bitmain could create headaches for NVIDIA, AMD, and Qualcomm. What is a Bitmain, and why
Bitmain.
Should those vary? Bitmain, pardon me. Bitmain Technologies, right? Are they making the ASICs? Are they the ASIC manufacturer of choice?
Correct.
For cryptocurrency mining?
These are the guys that design the ASICs, have them produced, put them into the mining boxes, which is what we're showing there. That's an ant miner of some derivative I don't recognize off the top of my head. And these are the ones that are then sold to people or that are, compiled in, run. These are where your Bitcoin mining farms come from, your Litecoin mining farms come from if you're not using discrete GPUs. Now, what's interesting here is this story I wrote is not about like, hey, GPU mining versus ASIC mining, because that's not the debate to have. What was more interesting was that, so this company, Bitmain, kind of a very quiet, secretive company based in China. Bernstein did an analyst report on them and came to the conclusion that in 2017, they profited somewhere between $3 billion and $4 billion US, not revenue, profit, putting them at a higher profit than like NVIDIA through 2017, which, if you haven't been paying attention, has also been doing very well as a company. So the question that I had was like, okay, how does this company kind of sneak up out of nowhere, suddenly have $3 to $4 billion in profit, making these chips? What is the potential impact for this? And if you look at one of those Antminer boxes, they could have anywhere from 220 to 250 of these ASICs in them. So they're building a lot of them. They're small chips, but they're building a lot of them, and they're using up a lot of wafer runs at these fab facilities. Samsung, TSMC, Global Foundries, all these guys are potentially at play. TSMC has said that they, I don't think they named the customer specifically, but I think it was Bitmain that they talked about, we are doing a 20,000 wafer run per quarter or per month for this next quarter, right? And that's more than NVIDIA is getting out of TSMC.
Wow.
So the interesting thing that comes up is, foundry space is a limited resource, right? We haven't really hit any, if you look at the memory world, we're kind of at that threshold, right? That's why we have memory shortages on GDDR and NAND and all these other things. HBM, we haven't really hit that for sure in the processor space where your TSMCs and Samsungs and Global Foundries compete in, but we're close, right? And as we move over to 7 nanometer technology, there's a chance that a company like Bitmain, who is completely, not completely, but mostly unaffected by pricing, right? Because they sell those ant miners for anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000, or from several $100s up to several $1,000s. The idea is basically if Bitmain wanted to, they could outbid NVIDIA and AMD and Qualcomm and other guys, maybe even Apple, but probably not Apple, to get their chips made at a higher rate than the other guys, meaning that there could be a shortage of GPUs that come from this, or a shortage of mobile SoCs from Qualcomm, or whatever you're talking about, right? Shortage of modems from Qualcomm. This may not be a problem if Bitcoin continues to kind of slow down or maintain its current place. Then maybe this won't be an issue. But if it again becomes, we're getting up to 20K, there's significantly more interest in it. The idea is basically Bitmain can absorb several $100s of additional cost per system that they put out there, and they don't really care because they're just a profit-making, money-printing machine. Whereas if you're NVIDIA or AMD, you can't really suddenly charge twice as much for your GPUs on the consumer side because it costs you more to make them. That's just that market is not going to absorb that cost. The Bitcoin miner market will be able to absorb that cost because all they care about is what the profitability will be. So there's a lot of different things in play, but I thought it was interesting just to look at the idea of suddenly a $3 to $4 billion profit company appears basically out of nowhere over the course of 2 years, and could have a dramatic impact on all the other chip production that exists in the world if they Now think about this. They might not, Bitcoin mining or coin mining, cryptocurrency mining might not just take your GPUs away at retail. It might take away the ability for these guys to make GPUs to put out at retail to some degree, right? Maybe not as dramatic as I might be making it sound, but an interesting theory.
Oh my goodness. As one last thought before we meander off away from GPUs, I just wanted to show this Asus ROG campaign that showed up, in part because normally I'm not a real big fan. Like, no, I don't need RGB. No, I don't want to deal with. But these are the perhaps most stylish graphics cards I've ever seen, because they're doing the ROG Extreme 30. This is not an advertiser, by the way. I just wanted you to see the pizza and the space-covered GPU backs. So create your own ROG Strix 1080 Ti backplate design. Should you have the $1,200 to $1,500 to buy a 1080 Ti, and you can actually find a 1080 Ti, and your design wins their competition, you could have their your backplate design on there. I was just laughing at how cruel it is. The pizza one, I think, is particularly awesome, but how cruel it is to have a contest like this while nobody can really buy a GPU. But it's there. You know, the upside is thanks to cryptocurrency, AMD, quote, gains big in GPU market share. I would think they gained big in last quarter on GPU market share because they actually had a new GPU that was worth buying, although technically that would be the quarter before that. Illuminate me, sir, because it seems like AMD GPU availability has been a little thin.
Yeah, so the information that came out of this is basically AMD sold more GPUs 6% higher than they did the previous quarter. They moved from 27% market share to 33% market share, going from Q3 to Q4 of 2017. And these numbers are just the ones starting to come out as John Petty Research and that group does their compilation of stuff. That's actually a huge swing for any single quarter to exist. But the interesting but not surprising part of that is that a majority of that is based on just mining sales, right? So they actually started to quantify what these numbers were for the first time. They say that there were 3 million add-in cards sold to cryptocurrency specifically, valuing more than $776 million in revenue last year.
Wow.
Yeah, which is a lot. So the 6% swing that you see from AMD and NVIDIA, it's interesting because, you know, AMD didn't release any new graphics cards in Q4. NVIDIA didn't release any new graphics cards in Q4. The fundamental performance landscape for consumer gaming graphics cards didn't change inside that window. So it really was just, it appears at least that this was a cryptocurrency mining benefit that AMD had by being able to produce enough cards to sell to the mining community, as opposed to what NVIDIA has done. Also kind of interesting is that with this swing in market share, it should come as no surprise that more and more of the video cards sold are higher priced video cards. So while in Q3 it was 39% of the cards sold were mainstream cards, which is what these guys report as anything under $150. That dropped from 39% to 26% for this one. As you can see, the mid-range and high-end actually went up quite a bit. People who are buying these cards for mining are obviously leaning towards the higher-end models, probably quicker payoff periods, those types of things. So it all kind of builds into that. Now, the risk that AMD has as a company is cryptocurrency is volatile, things could change. This is not something you can really depend on. In a quarter or two, will that 6% swing back the other way because, you know, NVIDIA's inventory happened to cycle through this time, or, you know, the rumored NVIDIA releases of April-May timeframe occur, and now you have gamers and miners fighting for that part of the inventory a little bit more. It's really interesting discussion to have. I even kind of theorize here towards the end of the story about, like, if you're NVIDIA and you release a new card in March, April, May, whatever it happens to be, do you price it at the same that you would have last year? I kind of don't think you do, right? I think, unfortunately for gamers, what you do is you sell it for suddenly 25% more than you could have before. So if you remember when the 1080s came out, there was this assumed thing that, hey, that like the 04 class of GPU used to be, I don't know, $250, and now they're charging $320 for it, or whatever it happened to be. I would imagine that would happen again, is because all these additional units that are being sold by AMD and NVIDIA for cryptocurrency mining, they're not really making any more money on it. It's the channel and the resellers that are making the additional money, because they've already had their contracts in place with the AIBs. I'm sure they've worked in some ways to make it happen in the meantime, but so. Unless some other solution comes up into play where NVIDIA or AMD could guarantee a part would not be viable for cryptocurrency mining, people have theorized that NVIDIA would be able to lock out miners or something like that. I don't think that's likely, both from a technological standpoint or from a business standpoint. But it would be a tremendous goodwill gesture to the community. I think it's the second time I've mentioned that now, to do that. But I just, it's a tough business decision to have to make.
Yeah, no, it's someday the supply of graphics cards.
Yeah, it's nice to think so.
It's nice to think someday there'll be more. Someday.
What you really need is all these ASIC miners to come in, take over everything, make it worthless for GPUs to mine. But that's also a continuing battle. There are a ton of people. The problem is you get a bunch of people who are really smart, financially invested in this stuff. You can make anything happen, right? So these guys want to make sure GPUs remain, people who have made significant GPU investments want to make sure GPUs remain viable for mining, right? They don't really care about the gamers. They don't care about any of that other kind of stuff.
Well, that just seems cruel.
Yeah,
but fundamentally accurate. Oh my goodness! By the way, if you happen to be working on a mini ITX build and you're looking for a relatively affordable GPU, in theory, you can pick up a 1050, from an Asus-based 1050 with a whopping 2 gigabytes of RAM for just $170, which is really pathetic. Although the 560, it's basically that or a 560 for $170 right now. There are not a lot of sub 215 millimeter GPUs out there. I don't know why. You'd think there'd be more. I kid. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
PCPro.com is the place to go to get all of Ryan Shrout's work in the consumer marketplace. If you want hardware reviews, it is the place to go. I highly recommend it. I go there all the time, ladies and gentlemen, and we're going to have hopefully Ryan and Alan on the show in the new studio in the near future. Which is always fun to build out a new studio, which I'm not in at the moment. I'm in a closet, surrounded by furniture blankets, but that's just another day in my life. The place to find me, regular show I do is techthing.com, TEKTHING.com. We just did a huge backup special this week. We have found some pretty cool tools you might not have heard of if you're looking for ways to back up your system, whether it's cloud-based, local drives, internal drives in your system, or all three. We found some pretty cool open source tools for some folks looking to replace CrashPlan. We talked about 3-2-1 backups. We had a great viewer asking us, when should I be backing up? Answer immediately, starting now, starting yesterday, if you can go back in time. And quite a bit more actually in there. And next week, we have exciting things we can't talk about. And the week after that, Pi Day. We'll do a lot of Raspberry Pi stuff. We also do a show called AV Excel with Robert Heron, where we talk about, amongst other things, home theater and speakers and headphones and music and video and projectors and all that kind of stuff. So please come join us on AV Excel if you're into that kind of thing. You are listening to right now, ladies and gentlemen, This Week in Computer Hardware, aka Twitch. You can find all of our older episodes and the links and information on how to subscribe, not subscribe, at twit.tv/Twitch. And we hope you will join us in the future if this is your first show. And as always, at Ryan Shrout, at Patrick Norton, to find us and ask us questions on the Twitter. And thank you, each and every one of you, for listening. We appreciate you being out there. With that, I'm Patrick Norton.
I'm Ryan Shrout.
We'll catch you next week on Twitch.